we have to create database tables. So when you create a database table, in terms of the data integrity, we have to maintain some standards. Okay. So in order to maintain those standards, we have to follow certain rules on database level. Those rules are called as the constraints in SQL Server. So what are the constraints is? Constraint is a role created on the database table. Okay, constraint is a role created on the database table. Okay, so first let us see what are the different types of constraints we have. Then we can see all of them. So today's concept is constraints. Okay, database constraints. Okay, so what are the constraints we have is first one is primary key. Okay, these are the different types of constraints we have. Okay, so foreign key, null, okay, not null, check, default. Okay, and we do have another. So in order, this should come after primary key. Okay, so these are the constraints. So what is a constraint in detail? When you create a database table, see, we know how to create a database table. Whatever table I have created yesterday, I'm trying to drop it. Let I will create another table actually. Okay, so right, okay, I will create a database table. So let me figure out what are the rules we have to create. So I'm going to create a database table users. Name of the database table is users, and columns required for this database table is user ID, username, first name, last name, email address, date created, and location. Okay, so this is one database table. I would like to create a database table like this. So when I'm creating a database table, I have to follow some rules. What are the rules I have to follow is the user ID, it never be a redundant. It never be a duplicate value. Okay, right. I hope you can see now. So users is the database table I would like to create. So when I'm creating this table, these are the columns I would like to create: user ID, username, first name, last name, email address, and date created and location. Creating a rules on a database table means when you create a database table, we can take some control on it in terms of the data insert, update, and delete. So what is the meaning of that one? Okay, suppose if you take the column user ID, it never be a duplicate value. It never be a duplicate value. Means if you consider your hall ticket number in your classes, the same hall ticket number is not repeated for any others applicable to that university. So within that university colleges, one student will have only one hall ticket number only. The hall ticket numbers never be a duplicate or the redundant. So we have to create a database table which avoids the duplicate data. Suppose into this particular table, if I try to insert some data which is already inserted, it should not allow. So let me create a database table to understand it. Let me put all of them here. Okay, so these are the different types of constraints we have. Now, try to imagine, I'm trying to create a database table before I try to explain one of the concepts. Let us see how a table works, including these rules, without including these rules. And also we can see how to apply these rules as well. So I'm going to create a database table without applying any one of the rules. See, the first thing, what is the definition of the constraints is? Constraint is a rule that is applied against the database table. And this rule is applied during the insert, update, delete any one of the operations. So I would like to create a database table. The name of the table is users. I have created a database table. And this table is having columns ID, integer, ID, you can consider it as the user ID. Okay, user ID. And the second one, let me take a short name of the student. Okay, name of the student. Let me keep it as the 20 characters. Okay, so for now, I have created only two columns. Okay, so as per the requirement, we can create n number of columns also. But in order to understand what is a primary key, let me create two columns, user ID and the name. I have created a table. Now, what I need is, okay, so table is created and table is having two columns, user ID and name. I would like to insert the values into this database table. So the first thing I have to remember when I set a user ID is the unique column, means it won't allow the duplicate values in it. In general, no two students will have the same roll number in a class. Every student should hold a different roll number. If two students holding the same roll number means it will confuse two others. So basically, the purpose of the roll numbers, the purpose of the hall tickets introduced into the real-time world, the main reason is identifying a student is not possible by name of the student. There will be multiple students in the class. Whenever we call a student, maybe more than one person will try to respond when we try to call with a name. So instead of calling with name, if I'm able to call with roll number, there will be only one response always. So it is the purpose of the ID columns, roll numbers, hall ticket numbers. These are called as the identification columns. We can identify a person by the roll number. If you are a student, we can identify a person using employee ID if you are an employee. So these are called as the identification columns. So the identification columns, it should not allow duplicate values. Means if I try to assign a duplicate value, into that particular table, it won't allow. So duplicate value means the same value repeating twice in a database table. Suppose if you take example in this database table, okay, in this database table, I will try to insert the values into this database table, insert into name of the tables, users. I'm trying to insert the values into database table, users. And what are the columns I would like to insert is user ID is one column and name is the another column. Two columns I would like to insert. And the values are one, one, next one is test, like this. So I'm trying to fill this value. Try to insert this value. Name, let me take some meaningful name, easy. I have taken this name. I will try to insert this data into the database table. See, one row is affected, means if I try to select the table, I can see the data, that is fine. Okay, you can see. Now, what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to insert another record. Okay, I'm trying to insert another record. Maybe the second record, it should not be same as the previous record in terms of the user ID. Suppose if I would like to keep easy twice as the name of the student in a table, that is quite possible in the real-time world. No two persons can have the same name. But if I try to insert the same ID, so let me keep ID to, let me keep EasyTech as the second name. I can insert the values. So that is fine. We can see the data. Now, I'm trying to change the name. Okay, I'm trying to change the name, some X, Y, Z, but the ID still I keep it as the two only. Maybe I forgot it by mistake, whatever reason. Okay, so user ID column is the identification column, means no user ID will be assigned to more than one student in a class or more than one user in a database. If I try to insert the data at this moment, it will allow. Suppose if I try to select the table, see now there are two students with the same ID number two, take and XYZ. Suppose if you consider a student database, this is the student database, students X, student Y, okay, student X, student Y, they were holding the same hall ticket number. Now, if I try to get the marks of user ID 2, both will get the same marks because I'm trying to fetch the data using user ID. Always I will try to fetch my data using hall ticket number. I never try to fetch the data using my name. So in this case, what happens? That leads to the data security low. So I mean to say, when you try to insert the data into a database table, by mistake or wantedly, if I try to insert the same record twice, I'm talking about the column, sorry, not record, I'm talking about the user ID column. If I try to insert same column twice, it should not allow. Means 2 is restricted to enter only once. If I try to enter the value 2 again, it should not allow. So we need to apply that rule on the database table. This will help us to maintain the scalability, integrity in a given database table. So this is the way to design highly perfect database. So in order to do that, when you create a database table, we have to apply the rules on it. So whatever the rule we are seeing here, okay, see the primary key, this is helpful to design a database table which avoids the duplicate values in it. Means if we try to enter a duplicate value in this particular column, it will not allow. Okay, so let me drop this database table. I will try to create another database table with the applying primary key rule. Okay, so okay, so I have this database table. User ID is created, int is created. After int, what I will do is I will try to add a keyword which is called as the primary key. So basically primary key means it won't allow duplicate values. Okay, it won't allow duplicate values. Sorry, I forgot one more thing. Let me create another database table. Okay, so the same database table which we were seeing here. If we try to see the data, okay, as of now there is one table. In a real-time architecture, in a database architecture, we have a specific word which is called as the null. Here you can see null. So what is the meaning of the null is at this moment value is nothing. Okay, at this moment value is nothing. Say, suppose if I ask you a question, your answer is correct or not. When I can tell you that if you reply to me. If you do not reply to me, I cannot say your answer is yes or no. I mean, correct or incorrect. It doesn't mean either you know the answer or you don't know the answer. Basically, I don't know. Whatever question I have asked, if you if you ask me to correct give a question and correct the answer, I can correct the answer if you respond. If you don't respond, I have to wait until you respond. That is the process. In the real-time architecture also, in general, each database column should have a value. It need to have a value. Sometimes what happens is the value is not yet decided, or at this moment, I don't want to enter. Okay, I don't want to enter. Maybe in future, I would like to enter that value. In that case, what happens is a value will be occupied. That value is called as the null. The meaning of the null is at this moment, nothing. Okay, at this moment, nothing. Suppose I am trying to insert only user ID, and probably at this moment, I don't want to insert username. So only user ID I have given. Let me try to input a value for try to insert and execute. See, one row is affected. If you would like to see columns, okay, see, as I do not fill the value of the name in this particular table, see, only user ID I have given, even the name exists in database table. I do not given it user ID, only user ID I have given. When I put the data like this, whatever column at this moment I don't want to fill it, that value takes the null value. So null value means at this moment nothing. Okay. So it doesn't mean the value is zero, or it doesn't mean the value is null. Null means at this moment nothing. At this moment nothing. Okay. So see, instead of keeping null, if you keep a value like this, okay, if you keep a value like this, that is also possible. You can keep it like this. Okay, you can keep it like this. What is the meaning of this line is the meaning of the next line we have inserted. See, if you look at here, see, this is null, this is empty. Empty will be considered as the value. Now, what is your name is empty. At this moment, your name is space. Okay, if you fill the data with the empty column like this, with only spaces, if you fill the data, that means you have some value in it. So basically, null stands for at this moment nothing. It has no meaning. It has no value in it at this moment. Maybe you have doubt instead of keeping why I should not keep like this empty. Empty means now your name is empty. We can say your name is space. Instead of that, at this moment, I don't want to fill this value. Let it be empty for now. Maybe in future, I would like to keep it. So this kind of values are called as the null values. So if you define a primary key column in a database table, that primary key column, it won't allow null values into it. It won't allow duplicate values in it. So let us see how it works. Okay. So at this moment, whatever the user ID column we have taken, if we try to insert the null value, that will take. See, I'm trying to insert the null value into this database table. Now try to select this database table. You can see user ID is null, name also null. However, I would like to define a standard rule on this database table. The user ID should not be duplicated. Means if I assign one to user ID easy, I should not assign one to any other user. If I try to do it, the database should refuse to take the value. That is the first rule. The second one, into this particular column, okay, into this particular column, I never want to allow the null values. Means if I try to assign a null value to any one of the user ID, it should refuse. Okay, it should refuse. That is another rule I would like to apply on the database table. In that particular case, we have to apply the rule which is called as the primary key rule. So basically, what primary key rule will do is primary key rule, it will help to maintain the data standards which avoids the duplicate values, null values into the identification column. Identification column means the column which always differentiate from one row to another row. Okay, one row to another row means whatever the first column I am choosing, it has to differentiate from one column to another column. Okay, it never be a duplicate value or it never be a null value. In that case, we have to apply with the primary key column. See, applying these rules is very easy, just like one word when you creating the database table, but understanding them is very important. See, in interview point of view also very important. These are the first questions you need to encounter. Okay. So let me drop this database table. I dropped it. Now I will create a database table. I have created the column. I'm just trying to add one key, primary key after that. Okay, primary key column. Okay, so just create the database table. Table is created. Now try to insert the values into this database table. See, I have added one extra line to this database table creation. When I try to add this column to this database table, let us see how it works. Okay, so I will try to insert the values, insert into users table, okay, users table. I'm trying to insert the values, user ID, and name of the student, the name of the student. So let me try to insert the reasonable values. One is the user ID. Next, name of the student is Tech. This is it. Okay, so this is fine. One row is inserted. Okay, one row is inserted, and try to check out the table. You can see the data. Now, what I will do is, I will try to change the name. Okay, I will try to change the name, but we'll try to insert the same user ID for the next row also. Probably the user ID one already exists here. As of now, in the given database table, already one user ID exists. I'm trying to insert the same record. I'm trying to insert the same record. Click on execute. Definitely it won't accept. Violation of the primary key constraint. So basically it says violation of the primary key constraints. Cannot insert a duplicate key in object users. The duplicate key value is one, it says. It means to say violation of the primary key rule means when I set primary key on a database table, the meaning of the primary key is it should not be duplicated. So the value I'm trying to insert, it is trying to violate the primary key value. The second one, it says cannot insert duplicate key to object users. Means it says into this database table, we cannot insert duplicate key. Key is nothing but the primary key. Okay, we call it as the key column, identification column. Like this, we use many words, but standard ways we call it as the unique column. We cannot insert. The duplicate key is one. So basically, it says the one is already exist in the database table. We cannot insert it. Then probably we have to change the ID. Then try to insert. It can fill it. So like this, we can insert the user IDs. It won't and it never accept the duplicate values. In similar fashion, if I try to insert the null value into this database table, see to the first column, to the first column, to the user ID column, I am trying to insert the null value. If I try to do it, if I try to do it, again, it will refuse. Cannot insert null into user ID. So basically it says into user ID column, you cannot insert the null value. The reason is this is the primary key column. So a constraint is the rule applied against the database table. And in that, there is one rule we can apply, that is the primary key. To this database table, I have applied the primary key rule. If I apply the primary key rule, we cannot insert either duplicate value or null value into the selected table. Okay, so this is the way how the primary keys are working. However, we need it one more time in order to complete this concept. You just need to remember the concept. So in general, when you go to the real time, how people will design the primary key column is, first they will make it as the identity column. Okay, identity column 1, comma 1. Okay, if you do that, automatically the column will become as the primary key. Why? If you set a column as the identity column, we discussed it yesterday, it won't allow to insert manually. We cannot insert that value manually like this. Okay, here we need it to see the concepts. I have given the privileges to see is that refusing the duplicate values or not. But if you set a user ID column as the identity column, that will go for the auto incrementation of the values so that this value never becomes a duplicate value or okay. It never accepts a duplicate value because always the value increment keep on incrementing from 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. And so basically says when you set a column as the identity column, the value never duplicate because it begins with the 1, it keep on increasing 1, 1, it never becomes duplicate. And also the value never becomes the null value because we set a default rule 1, comma 1. Okay, but still we have to write it as the primary key. The reason for it, I will discuss at the end of the, there is one more concept which is called as indexes. Then we will discuss it again why we have to define a primary key in the database table, but just remember it. Okay, so this is the way designing the primary key column. Okay, so in a database table, if you would like to define a primary key column, always we have to make it in this structure: user ID, database. User ID is the unique identification column, then identity, where it has to start and keep on increasing, then we have to make it as the primary key. And if you create a database table like this, probably you don't need to insert the user ID manually. Okay, insert into users. Okay, you just need name only because the first one we set it as the auto increment column. Okay, so keep on adding. Okay, like this. So that will allow. Okay. So now what happens as I set the user ID as the identity column, auto increment column, I don't need that value. Okay. So only name I'm trying to put it. If you try to select it, you can see it. Okay. So now if you select the database table, automatically one will be inserted. Okay. So you can add multiple values. I don't need to bother about the first column because that is auto incremented. Every time the value will increase one by one like this. Okay. So when you set an identity column in a database table, default that works as the primary key, but however, it is always good practice to keep the primary key as well. The reason for it, I will discuss when we discuss another concept, which is called as the indexes. Okay, that is something important to understand the data retrieval operation. Okay, so this is what exactly primary key. So all of you understood? Yes or no? Type in what is primary key. Anyone have doubt? Okay. Shregal, yes, yes, yes. Others? Niharika, Sneha, do you understand what is primary key? Okay, others? Meghana? Okay. So this is the primary key column. Okay. So now let me come up with a different requirement. Okay, let me come up with a different requirement. So basically, the purpose of the primary key is to avoid the duplicate values. Means a value should not be repeated for more than one student. And remember, in a database table, you can set only one column as the primary key column. Means, okay, let me take another example. User ID and email address. Email address also never repeats same for another student. Suppose if student X is holding a email address x@gmail.com, no other student will hold the same email address. Suppose when someone trying to collect your data, if they ask your email ID, no two students will have the same email ID. In similar fashion, when I create this database table also, what I will do is I will try to add another column. Okay, so I will try to create another database table. In this database table, I will take some additional column, user ID, and I will make it as the primary key, name, and let me also take email address. Okay, character of content. Okay, like this, I will take a database table. Let me try to create it. I have created a database table. Then try to insert the values name and email address. Okay, name and email address. Okay, I will try to insert the email address also. So when I'm trying to insert the email address, first email, I will give it as easy one email address is easy@gmail.com. Okay, like this. Insert the values. Okay, you can insert it. And let me try to insert another database table. Okay, another row in the database table. Let me take it easy tech 3. Try to insert the same thing. Okay, try to insert this same thing. At this moment, it will accept. Okay, at this moment, it will accept. Okay, so if we try to select the database table, at this moment, we can see email address easy1 and easy3. They both are holding the same email address. Probably it never be a password. So similar to user ID, email address also unique identification column means like user ID, no two students will have the same user ID. In similar fashion, email address also, no two students will have the same email address. Then what we should do? Like the primary key, the first column, we set it as the primary key. We cannot set more than one column in a database table as the primary key column. Okay, so that is not possible and that is not suggested also. So if I try to create the same primary key column under database table, okay, another database table, it will push up the error. See, cannot add multiple primary key constraints to a database table users. So this is not possible. Only one column in a database table, we can set it as the primary key. And as per the requirement, there may be multiple columns similar to user ID, which don't accept the duplicate values. The values can be different from one user to another user. Suppose if I take another column mobile number, no two students will have the same mobile number because everyone is holding their own numbers, right? And unless you are trying to cheat your organization, no two students will have the same mobile numbers as well. So that is also unique column. So we need to understand when you create a database table, there may be multiple columns which are not redundant, which don't accept the duplicate values, but as per the role, the primary key column, we can set it on only one column. We cannot set it for multiple columns. Instead of primary key, you can set it as the unique. You can set it as the unique. So what is the meaning of the unique case? Unique won't allow the duplicate values. See the difference. Primary key won't allow the null value and duplicate value. email address, it will avoid the duplicate value. See, very minor difference. We have to be very clear. Primary key will be talking about null values and the duplicate values. Unique key will be talking about only duplicate values. Okay, unique key will be only talking about duplicate values. So in this example, the email address, I will try to make it as the unique now, as I cannot set it as the primary key. Executed is created. Now let me try to insert the values. It will take. Okay, it will take. Means if I try to select the data, I can see xwich at gmail.com. Now, if I try to insert same email address for the next record, it will throw the error. Okay, violation of the unique key constraint, because the email address already exists for another student. We cannot assign it for the next student. That value is always unique. But unique is only talking about the duplicate values only. It never discuss about the null values. So as this role, what I will try to do is to easy take 3, I will try to assign another null value. I will try to assign the null value. Let it be insert. See, if you look at it, will insert the data. So in interviews, you will be asked what is the main difference between primary key and unique key. Primary key will be talking about duplicate value and also null value. If you set a key as the primary key column, it won't accept the null value. It won't accept the duplicate value also. The email address, which we set it as the unique. The unique key column only talking about the duplicate values. It won't talking about the null values. Okay. Right. So all of you understood the difference between unique key and the primary key? Yes or no? Anyone can please respond. Do you understand?
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. హలో
Yes.
సార్ సార్ యూనిక్ కీ అనేది ఓన్లీ మన ఈమెయిల్ అడ్రస్కి ఇచ్చాం కదా ఏటీఏ టైంలో నేమ్ కూడా ఇవ్వచ్చా
Yeah, you also. We can assign unique key to multiple columns. You can set any number of columns as the unique key.
నేమ్
Yes.
అండ్ వేరే ఫీల్డ్స్ ఉన్న వాటికి కూడా యూనిక్ అని మెన్షన్ చేస్తే ఓన్లీ
Yes. If you take location, mobile number, for all, you can set it as the unique key. So unique key, it can set to multiple columns. There is no restriction, but primary key, we can set it to only one column.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. So guys, others understand? Sneha, Niharika, Sai.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Can we enter null in multiple cells in single column, unique column?
Yeah, I will come to that part, Dinesh.
Okay, okay.
Okay. See, without searching the Google, just think about it for 2 minutes. Let me have coffee and we'll come back. And if you guys also want, go for coffee and buy a break and come back. Meanwhile, think about it. I said unique key will be only talking about the duplicate values. It won't talk about the null value. Okay. Now, I would like to insert another row. As I said, it will not, the unique key column will not talk about the null values. What happens if I try to insert this value? Because this is only talking about the duplicate value. Unique will avoid the duplicate values. If I try to run this query, the null value already exists. Okay, it's already taking the null value. If I try to do another record, what happens? Just think about it. Take a break for 3 to, or you do the take break till 8 o'clock. Then try to respond. Meanwhile, just think about it. What happens if I try to insert another column? Don't Google it. Just apply some sense, I mean, common sense kind of thing. Try to guess it, what happens. Okay, I will be away from my desk for 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, we will continue discussing this concept. Thanks so much. Okay, so if you would like to set a date create, see, if you take a date of birth column, you need to enter that manually. But if I would like to trace when this record is created into the database table, that is always today's date. If I try to do it today, the values by default, it has to take the today's date. Means manually, I don't want to enter that value. I would like to take that value by default as the today's value. Okay, today's value. Now, in this example, what happens? You need to set that value manually. When you try to set that manually in database, there are many problems with it. Okay, many problems with it. Suppose if I set like this, okay, can someone try to guess what is this date? Of course, 2024, you can guess it here. Okay, let me keep like this. 4. Is this April month, 3rd, or March 4th? What is this date exactly? Is this April 3rd or March 3rd? March 4th. It can be April 3rd or March 4th because different people in the universe will follow different rules to indicate the date. Maybe in India, we follow one kind of date. Yeah, maybe in India, we follow one kind of date. Other countries will follow different kinds of date. Putting this value manually is bit risky in SQL Server. So that's why many people, how they maintain the date is in order to maintain 3rd March 2024. Like this, people will write the date so that it will avoid the confusion. However, this format is not supported by the SQL. In the SQL, by default, it will take the data format of the server. Suppose at this moment, my system follows month, date 2024, month, date, year. So my SQL server also will follow the same structure. So if I ask someone from you to fill in date, you try to follow the date in your local standards. Okay, how the people locally follow. So you will try to follow the same structure. So for any reason, I don't want to enter this value manually. I would like to take it default as the today's date according to my system. Okay, according to my system. Okay, how to do it? That is where the concept of the default comes to the picture. So what is the default is? I don't want to assign that value manually. It has to take a default value always. Even I don't assign any value, it has to take that value automatically. That is called as the default value. And remember, the default value column can be inserted manually as well. Okay. So now what I will do is, in this database table, as of now, I'm not putting that value manually because that causes to okay, so that leads to the format exceptions and all. Okay, so if you say this, okay, values will be created, but date created is null at this moment. But it has to take the default value. Means if I try to create this table, this row today, it has to take today's date automatically. Okay, it has to take today's automatically. Then what you should do is after date created, okay, after date created, just write default, write get date. Okay, so default indicates the default key constraint. Get date indicates the today's date. Automatically, it takes the today's date. You can take the tomorrow's date also. You can take the previous date also, but try to do some analysis on it. How to display the today's date and previous date. Suppose it will display today's date. If you would like to display the yesterday date, you can display. If you would like to display what is the date after a month, you can display. You can do it, but try to do the experiment on it. Now, I did changes to the database table. In this, the date created, I set the default as the get date. Get date will give you what is the today's date and create a database table. Now, I do not set that value. whatever date time is there, I do not set date. Try to run this application. One row is created and try to select the database table. This will automatically takes the date and time when this row is created. So what is the default key constraint in a database table is when you don't set any value to it. Yeah, when you don't set any value to it, it will take a value by default that is called as the default key constraint. Okay, default key constraint. And if you try to fill that value manually, and the filled value will be taken. Okay, so you can try it out instead of instead of taking the default value. If you would like to take that value manually, try to put tomorrow's date or previous date and see how it works. And let me know if you are having any struggle with it. So that is the meaning of the default key constraint. So so default will set a automatic value when you do not set any value to the database table. Okay, so that is the default value. Now, let us try to discuss about the check key constraint. What check key constraint will do is the check key constraint will apply to a database table. Okay, let me give you one example. If I try to insert a value into a column, there is a column which is called as the gender. So gender column is always, it would be having three columns only, either male or female or transgender. In the universe, there are only three types of genders, male, female, and transgender. If someone try to put a value in gender column, like ABC, XYZ, that is possible for name. Someone can name it as the ABC, XYZ. But if I try to insert a value XYZ into the gender column, it should refuse. Our database should not accept that value. So a particular column is always would be from the selected columns only. Let me give you another example. What is your branch in your college? What are you studying? Which branch you are studying? So in a college, there would be some specific branches, CSC, EEE, okay, ECE, like this. So it should accept those values only into the database table. If I try to put a different value, it should not accept. So if you take an employee in a database table, if you try to create a database table employee as per your requirement, so there are only three departments in the company, IT, sales, and marketing. When I try to fill the information about the student, if I try to fill the information into the column department else from IT, sales, and marketing, it should not accept because there are only three types of departments. So in these cases, we have to work with the check key constraint. So basically what check key constraint will do is check key constraint will allow the specific values only into the database table. Okay, in that particular column. If I try to assign other values, it won't accept it. Suppose let me create another column for this database table. Okay, this database table. I would like to give it as the name. Data type is 8. Okay, data type is 8. Okay, so now check age greater than 18. This one is not 18. Okay, now what happens is into this database table, if I try to assign, if I try to assign age less than 0, it won't accept it. Okay, it won't accept it. Okay, so now let me take age. Age. Let me give it as 56. See, it will accept. Okay, you can see the age 56. Now let me try to key in 12. Okay, it won't accept because violation of the rule. Okay, check key constraint. It will check for each record age is greater than 18 or not. Suppose if you're trying to play a mobile game, it will ask what is your age. The reason for it, you should have specific age to play certain video games. Okay, so you can try for it like keep a column department and just Google it out. I don't remember the syntax for it to mention the column name. How it means in the department, if I need to allow only IT, sales, and marketing, how to put them into the database table. Apart from IT, sales, and marketing, how to avoid the other values, that also can be done. Okay, just like not only age factor, but we have to change the syntax little bit. Okay, when you try to include the multi, see, I have taken only one column, age greater than 18. Maybe if you take the department column, you have to allow the three columns, IT, sales, and marketing. You slightly need to change the syntax for it. You try it out, and if you don't get it, I will figure it out. Okay, at this moment, I don't remember how to check the multiple value syntaxes, but try to do it. It's very easy part. Just like check, we have to do small change in this area. Okay, so that will help you to change the value. If you try to do it now, in this particular column, check key constant will avoid always a value less than 18 into this database table. So there are many examples. Another example you can take, nowadays we have some standard rules, a labor rule. Suppose if you are trying to create an employee database, there is a standard according to the rules of the nation. A person should have the minimum salary. If you try to give less than 10,000 salary to any one of the employee, that is the rule violation of the nation. Means a salary is always greater than 10,000. It never be a less than 10,000. If I try to do it, it won't accept any values of it. In those cases, we have to keep checking, check key constraints. So that is the meaning of the check key constraint. Then not null means, not null means a value can be duplicated and a value can be, it can be null. Sorry, it cannot be null, but you can put any value. You can put any value. Okay. Suppose if you take, see, in this database table, which already we have created, to the column name, I do not set any constraint. I do not set any constraint so that it will take any value. Null, it will take, duplicate value, it will take, okay, whatever I put, that will be taking as the name. I mean to say, the name value never be a null, can never be a null. Means every person will have name, right? There is no person in the universe without name. So at this moment, into this database table, if I try to insert, null value to the name, null value to the name, it will take. Okay, at this moment, if I try to insert null value to the table, it will take. Okay, name, I'm giving it as the null. It will take. It won't apply any. Say it will take. Say if you look at the, if you look at the name null, but in practical, in the universe, there won't be any person without name. What I need is, it doesn't matter what is the value I'm trying to put it into the name column, but it never be an empty value. Always I need a value to put it into it. Means it should not accept the null values. Either you keep it duplicate, either you keep it numbers, either you keep it empty, anything it accept, but not null. It never be a null. In that case, you have to set that column as the not null column. So after your name, you just need to type in not null. Okay, not null. Now what happens is, you need to put, always you need to put a value. And it can be anything. Suppose if I try to fill this information now. Yeah, see, frequently I'm creating and dropping and recreating the table. Okay, see, if I try to do it now, it won't accept. So they cannot insert null into the column name. Means name never going to be null. Always you have to put a value. So let me keep a value test. If I try to put it, it will allow. Okay. If you would like to keep the same text for another also, see if you look at, okay, test exists. If you would like to keep the same for others also, it will accept. It will only consider, it will only discuss about the duplicate values only, sorry, null values only. I should not keep the null. Suppose if you would like to keep like this, that is also accepted. You can keep the empty value, that is fine. Okay, like this you can create. See, if you select the table, see, you can see the empty, but it is never going to be null. If I try to keep some value, null value, it won't accept it. So that is the meaning of the not null. So basically, not null will be talking about avoiding the null values. It won't accept null values into database table. So null is against. Okay, null is against. By default, if you don't set any one of these constraints, means I do not set primary key, I do not set unique, default I do not set it, check I do not set it, not null I do not set it, then every column will take the default constraint as the null. Means suppose let me create another column in this database table. I will try to push it to the next line so that you can see it. Here, what I will do is I'm trying to create another column, location, character of 100. Okay, like this. Now, this is by default null, means it will accept the null values, duplicate values, empty values, everything it will accept. It has no restriction on it. See, the value inserted, if we try to select the values, null value will be taken. Suppose if you would like to insert the value, and that value will be taken. Okay, Hyderabad, selected. See, it will take. If we try to display the records, see, null accepted, Hyderabad accepted. If you would like to insert the empty, that will also accept. Okay, that will also accept. Okay, so empty will accept. And if you don't assign any value, okay, I'm not assigning any value, then by default it will take the null values. Okay, like this. It will accept the duplicate, it will accept the null, it will accept some value, anything it will accept. So this constraint is called as the null constraint. And if you don't assign any constraint, means unique key, I do not set default. If you don't set any one of them, by default, a column will be considered as the null constraint. Okay, so that is the meaning of the null constraint. Okay, so we'll discuss foreign key constraint in the next class. And these constraints are very important in terms of the interview. Guys, I'm really worried if you are not doing the practice, the future classes will not help. If you need some break,